But how about we just don't do either of these? That's an idea. Hello everybody, it's Rose and welcome back to Cheap Lazy Vegan and another video. Today I'm going to be tackling common arguments against veganism. This is part 3, guys. This is my 3rd video on this topic. So if you guys want to see part 1 and 2, then check those videos out down below. So today I'm tackling a few more and yeah, let's just jump right into it. What if they were raised humanely? This is definitely up there amongst probably the top 5 arguments against the idea of veganism. It's this idea of the humane meat. It's this concept of pigs running around in the fields, cows just grazing, the grass-fed, free-range, organic, use whatever words you want to use. People seem to always be against the idea of factory farms, okay? So if you show them like footage of factory farms, they will always say something like, yeah, but like, what if they're raised right? What if they're raised humanely? What if they had a chance to run around? Now, the problem is, the majority of people that are going to be making this argument don't understand the extent of which the great majority of animal products, I think the percentage is like 98%, something like that, of animal products that are consumed are from factory farmed animals, which isn't shocking. It makes total sense, which is why animal products are legitimately everywhere. They are everywhere. Like everywhere you go, there's gonna be milk and eggs and chicken and beef. How are these products so widely and readily available? They're widely and readily available because of factory farming. That's the only reason why so many people are able to consume so many animal products on a daily basis, because of a concept that was created to treat animals as if they were t-shirts in a product line. Chances are you're not eating products that were treated right. You're not eating animal products that were treated right. You're eating animal products from animals that have been tortured and literally just confined in a space so small that they can't even move, living in fear from the minute they were born to the minute they die, or are killed. I'm sorry, they don't just die, they are killed. That's the reality. So let's get into the concept of organic and free range meat. In the end, these animals are still killed. They don't just die of natural causes, they are killed. Their lives are taken without their consent when they don't want to be taken. They are killed. Okay, so switch that to human beings. I mean, murder is one of the worst things you could do. Killing a human being is one of the worst things that we could do. Why? Because you are taking away someone else's life. I understand that a lot of people think that animals are not equivalent to human beings or whatnot, but how is the worst thing that we could possibly do to a human being at least not somewhat bad when it comes to talking about animals, simply because they were raised right? You know what I mean? If you're comparing two things like killing versus torturing and killing, yeah, sure, just killing is probably better, but how about we just don't do either of these? That's an idea. Our human superiority complex definitely shows greatly when we talk about things like humane slaughter. You would never hear of anything like humane murder. You know, again, murder is quite honestly the worst, if not one of the worst things that you could do to a human being. The court of law acknowledges this, our society acknowledges this, and yet when it comes to the lives of other species, apparently, as long as they're raised right, murder is humane. Call it slaughter, call it murder, call it killing, call it whatever you want. In the end, you're ending someone else's life, a sentient being's life, without their consent, and it's bad, regardless of how they were raised. And if we only had, grass-fed, organic, free-range meat and animal products, such a small percentage of the population is going to be able to actually eat these products. The reason why most people are not vegan is because these products are mass-produced. But I feel like if we only did humane, organic, free-range, all that, then very few people would be eating animal products to the extent that we are. You know, the reason why it exists, the reason why we eat animal products so much is because of factory farming, okay? It's because of. And if you're eating out at a restaurant, you're not going to be eating grass-fed, organic, free-range food. If you're eating at McDonald's, it's of course not grass-fed, organic, free-range. People just use those terms. People just ask that as if they do this themselves. Like, oh, like, what about free-range? It's like, did you actually have a free-range chicken there? Or are you just saying this as an argument? Even if it was raised in the most humane way possible, in the end, it's still sent to a house of slaughter. It's still sent to a slaughterhouse where they are killed against their will and they are terrified. And just imagine, just try to put yourself in that position. Just imagine the horror you would feel, even if you had the best life possible, you had an amazing life, and then all of a sudden someone puts you in a truck and sends you somewhere, and then you smell blood and you see other humans dead, and you see carcasses everywhere, and you know what's going to happen to you. Like, imagine how terrifying and horrible that is. And animals are fully aware. Okay, they are horrified and terrified and they don't want to die. And yet we're doing this in such massive numbers. Anyways, the only way that there is humane killing is when it is a willing participant, or if they are in such pain that living is no longer possible. Like, those are the only times when I think killing is humane. Like euthanasia, for example. If there's something that they cannot cure and they are just in so much pain and agony, then yes, killing, in my opinion, in that circumstance, that is reasonable, and I think it's a humane thing to do. But other than that, if it's a normal, healthy, sentient being that doesn't want to die, killing is not humane. Whew, that was a long one. Where did you get your laptop from? What about human rights? I find that a lot of people, when they are arguing against a vegan, for example, with regards to veganism, they always make these character assassination attempts, or try to like one up the person they're arguing with, to be like, how, you're not perfect either. You know what I'm saying? Like, people always try to do this as if a vegan's behavior is expected to be completely perfect. You're not arguing about someone's behavior right now. You're arguing about a concept, an ethical stance. You're arguing about a specific topic, which is veganism. You're not arguing about whether or not I am more moral or you are more moral, or that's not the point. Never said I was perfect. No one ever said that. You're talking about animals and animal rights. You're not talking about sweatshops. Okay, this is a completely different topic, and no one ever said that sweatshops are okay, or that unfair wages and slavery, human slavery, is okay. Like, literally no one has said that, and that because that's not the topic of discussion, you know? Just because you are fighting for a certain right, whether it be human rights or animal rights, doesn't mean that you're ignoring all other issues and you don't think that other issues matter, okay? You're allowed to care about more than one issue at once. But personally, I think a lot of vegans can relate when they think that animal agriculture is one of the biggest problems that we have going on right now. And it's one of the easier things to not solve, but one of the easier things to really make a big difference from the ground up, because we have control over how we spend our money every single day, 3 times a day. We're spending all this money on animal products, and if we eliminate that, that can make a huge change in a short amount of time, as long as enough people do it. I know what people are trying to do, right? They're trying to point out a vegan's hypocrisy. They're trying to say, okay, you're a vegan and you're on this moral high ground and you're saying that animal abuse is wrong, yet you are still buying products that are manufactured in sweatshops, and so therefore you're a hypocrite. And you're right, maybe we are hypocrites. Maybe I'm sure I'm a hypocrite in many aspects. It doesn't make animal abuse right? It still doesn't mean that animal abuse is right. It still doesn't mean that slaughterhouses are okay. It doesn't change anything about the actual topic of discussion, which is animal rights, animal abuse. If you're a rapist and you say murder is wrong, it doesn't make what you're saying wrong. It just makes you a hypocrite. Sure, it may make you a hypocrite. It still makes you a terrible person, but it doesn't mean that you saying murder is wrong is a wrong statement. The thing is also that we need to kind of distinguish the difference, I guess, between products like cameras and laptops and mobile phones that obviously might be manufactured most likely in developing countries where wages are probably not very high, maybe working conditions are not very good. Of course, we should be concerned about the working conditions of fellow humans and be concerned about, what goes on in these factories. However, I think we need to distinguish the big difference between those types of products like cameras and laptops and all that stuff and animal products. So with things like cameras and laptops and all that stuff, the product itself is not the problem, right? The end product is an inanimate object. It's a product that could be very well produced in a ethical manner. We could pay workers fair wages and all of that stuff. But when it comes to animal products, it's a little bit of a different story because, as I've pointed out, in order to produce animal products, you have to kill an animal or make it go through all kinds of crap. So inherently, the consumption of animal products, the majority of animal products is wrong, morally speaking. So it's nothing to do, yes, regulation matters and all that stuff, but it's not really that much to do with regulation and how we can improve upon conditions. It's more about the product itself that's inherently bad versus cameras and laptops, which can be produced in an ethical manner as long as we have better laws and regulations and we take care of our workers and all of that stuff. So that is the distinction that I would like to point out. Again, you can be concerned with more than one issue at a time. So that's one thing I would like to make sure people are aware of. You don't have to be only concerned about one thing. And it doesn't make you wrong to argue for something, even if you might not be perfect in every other aspect of your life. Yeah. Okay. What's next? Veganism is a privilege. I have an entire video on this topic that I filmed a few years ago. So if you guys want to check that out, I will link that down below. But to give you a bit of a summary, the argument itself is just flawed in so many ways. I acknowledge fully that veganism is a social issue that most likely you won't care about or have the energy to think about unless you were in a position of privilege in society. For example, if all of your basic needs are taken care of, you have more energy in your day-to-day life to worry about issues outside of your own survival. If you're starving or if you are constantly fighting for shelter or whatever it may be, then you probably just don't think about anything outside of that, which is totally normal, which is why social issues are much more talked about in countries that are more affluent. So yes, are you more likely to care more about issues such as veganism or animal rights if you were in a position of privilege? Yes, probably, but it doesn't make the actual being a vegan a privilege, right? Yes, you are more likely to be vegan if you are in a position of privilege, but it doesn't mean that veganism itself is a privilege. Do you see what I'm saying? I feel like it's more of like a responsibility to do what we can in our part to do less harm to animals and the environment, all that stuff, rather than being a privilege. I mean, we all live in a world of privilege. If you're watching this video, most likely you are one of the few that are quite privileged. And even if veganism was a privilege, just because something is a privilege doesn't mean that it's not okay. I talk about this in my last video where I talk about this topic, but education is a privilege, right? Secondary education, university, these are privileges only enjoyed by a few people. And yeah, not everyone gets a chance to have a good education. Not everyone gets a chance to go to even high school or university, but these are positive privileges, right? These will do good for society. Okay, having more people that are more educated are going to create a greater good for our society. So even if these are privileges only enjoyed by a few people, it's beneficial for the entirety of our society to have an educated population. No one would argue that education is bad. No one would do the whole, well, education is a privilege as an argument against education. Of course, education is a privilege. Not everyone has an education or has a chance to get an education, but it doesn't make education a bad thing just because it's a privilege. And it's the same with veganism. Even if it was a privilege, it's not a negative thing because it's still going to create a greater good in our society, which is less animals being harmed and killed and tortured. We also improve our environment because animal products cause so much environmental damage. So less animal products that are produced will cause less environmental damage. So obviously that's for the greater good, and so on and so forth. So something being a privilege does not make it bad. It's not an argument against it. And the last argument I'm going to talk about is the "it's my personal choice" argument. It's the whole, I respect the fact that you're vegan, so you should respect the fact that I'm not a vegan because it's my personal choice and I can do whatever I please because I respect you. People do this all the time because it makes them seem like they're the rational, more understanding ones. You know what I mean? When people say this, they feel like they're being the open-minded one. I respect that you're vegan, and so I would appreciate if you would respect my choice to eat meat. It's kind of like a passive-aggressive attempt at making vegans seem irrational and making vegans seem close-minded and not open to accepting other people's lives or other people's choices. And here's the thing. This is not a fair argument. That's the problem. You're not comparing two things that are equal. This would be a fair argument. Oh, I like the color blue, so I like to wear blue. You like to wear the color orange, so you wear the color orange. And I accept you wearing orange, and you can accept me wearing blue. That would be a fair argument, okay? Because those two things are pretty much equal. These are personal choices. It doesn't impact me when you wear orange, other than me looking at an orange shirt. It doesn't negatively impact me. If I wear blue, it doesn't negatively impact you, and so everyone can live happily ever after. But the problem with using the whole, you should accept me for what I do because I accept you for you do, this argument doesn't work when there are victims in the scenario. Okay, in one case, which is veganism, this is a stance against having victims, such as animals. And if you're not a vegan, if you're just eating animals, that means there are victims in the scenario. Whether you want to admit it or not, there are going to be victims in the scenario because you are feeding into the industry that is fed by your dollar, that is fed by your money to kill animals, right? So veganism against animal cruelty, no victims, and non-veganism is full of victims. So this isn't an equal argument, okay? This isn't just a personal choice argument because now there are victims involved, sentient beings that are victimized and killed. Once you have that in the equation, you can't make this argument because these are not equal. Personal choices are personal choices only if there are no other beings involved, which is why it's called a personal choice. A personal choice is not me going out and kicking a dog. Me kicking a dog would be a choice that harms the dog. Therefore, it is no longer a personal choice. It is not a personal choice to rob someone because you are negatively impacting someone else. And eating animal products is, I'm sorry, not a personal choice because someone else had to be killed for your personal choice. So it's not a personal choice. I'm sorry, it's not. And I get it. It's easy to say it's a personal choice because all you see is a piece of meat that has been cut out so to the point where you can't see what animal it came from. It's just like a big slab of meat and it's sitting there in the grocery store, so you think it's just my personal choice whether I can eat it or not. But that animal was killed. Didn't accidentally die, it was killed. And when you feed into that industry with your money, you are feeding into an increase in supply, which will ultimately result in more animals being bred and killed. So the it's my personal choice argument doesn't work. Sorry, doesn't work, because then you could argue that about anything. It's my personal choice to rob you. It's my personal choice to bite your finger off. No, personal choices are only personal choices when there are no other victims involved. If there are victims involved, it is no longer a personal choice. Anyways, that is it for my common arguments against veganism part 2 video. Or no, this was part 3. So if you guys want to check out part 1 and 2, I will link those videos down below. Definitely check those out. Yeah, let me know down below what your thoughts are on this video and on any of these topics. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? What do you think? If you're new to this channel, of course, don't forget to subscribe. And of course, give this video a big thumbs up if you liked what you saw. And I will see you guys in my next video.